Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into a place where mountains scrape the sky, rivers roar like dragons, and entire empires have burned for a single slice of heaven. You're standing barefoot in the Vale of Kashmir, the grass still wet with morning dew when a man in a military jeep barrels by yelling about borders you've never heard of. Welcome to 1947, the year your geography teacher has nightmares about. This is the partition of India, and you probably won't survive this. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing who's drifting. Off around the world? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle through the dust and confusion of a brand new world, literally redrawn overnight. India is becoming independent, Pakistan is being carved out of it, and in the middle, like the last slice of pizza nobody knows who claimed, is Kashmir. Officially, it's the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir ruled by Maharaja Hari Singh, a Dogra Hindu monarch over a Muslim-majority population. Already sounds like someone stirred the pot and walked away, right? Hari Singh, bless him, just wants to stay neutral. He's like that friend at the party who says, "I'm not picking sides," while standing between two drunk exes yelling across the room. He even proposes a standstill agreement, basically a let's not do anything rash letter, to both India and Pakistan. Pakistan signs it. India's like, we'll think about it. Then October hits like a truck. Armed tribesmen from Pakistan's northwest frontier province roll into Kashmir like they're late for a treasure hunt. Spoiler, they're not sightseeing. Some say it's an organic uprising by Kashmiri Muslims. Others whisper that Pakistan encouraged the raid to force the issue. Historians still argue whether this was a spontaneous revolt or state-sponsored chaos. Either way, Hari Singh panics. His army folds like origami. He flees to Jammu and frantically writes to India for help. India says, "Sure, but only if you join us officially." So he signs the Instrument of Accession on October 26, 1947, and just like that, Kashmir is, technically, part of India. You might want to pause for a deep breath here. Or a snack. India airlifts troops into Srinagar the next day. Picture that, DC-3 planes swooping between snow-capped peaks, dodging gunfire and turbulence, while soldiers jump out to secure an airstrip the size of your school parking lot. Meanwhile, Pakistan doesn't take this lying down. They argue the accession was forced. India claims it was legal. Kashmiris? Mostly watching from windows as tanks roll through their orchards. The First Indo-Pak War begins. You trudge behind soldiers up Himalayan slopes where frostbite becomes the third enemy. Somewhere in the chaos, the idea of a plebiscite, a vote to let Kashmiris decide, gets tossed around like a beach ball no one really wants to catch. India says it'll happen once peace returns. Pakistan says it was all theirs to begin with. Meanwhile, the United Nations pokes its head in and suggests everyone calm down. Fun historical tidbit. The UN sets up a ceasefire line in 1949, later known as the Line of Control. It's like a giant invisible wall slicing Kashmir into two. India controls the larger portion, Pakistan the rest. And that's the version most of the world gets used to, even though no one officially accepts it as a border. It's like drawing a line on a shared bedroom floor, technically meaningless, but emotionally nuclear. Back on the ground, you notice a strange melancholy settling over the valley. Apple trees bloom quietly near sandbag bunkers. Soldiers sip chai with rifles on their laps. And you realize the paperwork might say accession, but the people aren't sure what they've signed up for. You lean in to hear an old shepherd mutter in Kashmiri, "Yimchi chukor zulum," they have brought suffering. He doesn't care which flag flaps in the wind. He just wants to take his flock up the mountain without stepping on a mine. Now for a fun fringe fact, rumor has it that Maharaja Hari Singh tried to flee with literal chests of treasure loaded onto trucks when the tribesmen invaded. Some say the gold vanished en route. Indiana Jones, if you're listening, take notes. By the time Section 1 wraps, you're knee-deep in irony. The whole Kashmir mess began with a ruler who didn't want to choose sides and ended with two nations building. Entire military doctrines around who owns which hill, and Kashmiris, mostly caught in between, still watching, still waiting. You sit by the Dal Lake as dusk settles, wondering how a place this beautiful could have become a geopolitical landmine. Then again, history's never been great at sparing the scenic routes. You wake up shivering, not from fear, though fair, but from the fact that you're now trudging through a Himalayan winter in 1948. The ceasefire line has just been drawn, but the air still feels thick with unresolved tension, like a dinner party where someone definitely brought up politics too early. The First Indo-Pak War has technically ended thanks to the UN stepping in with a ceasefire that nobody actually likes. It leaves India holding about 2/3 of Jammu and Kashmir, including the fertile Kashmir Valley, and Pakistan holding the northwestern slice now called Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Azad meaning free, though how free is up for debate. You find yourself standing on a new kind of border, the line of control, LOC. It's not even called that yet, just the ceasefire line for now. It's basically a jagged scar across the landscape, carved not by nature, but by negotiation and bullets. And here's the kicker. Both countries still claim the whole region. You know, like two toddlers fighting over a toy neither one is playing with nicely. India's argument? The Maharaja signed the Instrument of Accession, case closed. Pakistan's counter, it was signed under duress, and most of the population is Muslim. Anyway, historians still argue whether the Maharaja's decision reflected the people's will or just a Hail Mary pass for survival. You sip imaginary tea and sigh, why not both? Meanwhile, the promised plebiscite, the vote to let Kashmiris decide their future, becomes a ghost. India says it'll happen once Pakistan removes its troops. Pakistan says they'll do that. Once India stops pretending Kashmir's already theirs, neither side blinks. So the vote that could have changed everything just floats there, like a lost balloon. In 1951, India holds state elections in its part of Kashmir, claiming it as proof of democratic integration. Pakistan isn't thrilled. Kashmiris? They're starting to figure out that being the disputed territory is a full-time gig. Fast forward through the 50s and 60s and you realize the LOC is slowly becoming not just a line on a map, but a wall in people's hearts. Families get divided, trade routes freeze, shepherds are shot for wandering too far. You pass a border village where a grandmother hasn't seen her sister in decades. She just stares across the valley and remembers the days before anyone cared which army patrolled the ridgeline. Oh, and here's your quirky moment. In the early years, the LOC wasn't always strictly enforced. Some villagers used secret footpaths to cross over, smuggling letters, love stories, and occasionally goats. One Kashmiri woman supposedly disguised herself as a shepherd for years just to visit her husband. That's either romance or deeply impractical commuting. Then 1965 happens, and you're thrown into the Second Indo-Pak War, because apparently once wasn't enough. Pakistan launches Operation Gibraltar, hoping to sneak fighters into Indian Kashmir and spark rebellion. It doesn't go well. India pushes back hard. By the end, the war achieves about as much as a treadmill workout. Lots of effort, very little. Forward motion. The borders barely change. Tensions cool slightly after the 1972 Simla Agreement, where both sides agree to settle things bilaterally and rename the ceasefire line the line of control. Still not a formal border, but it might as well be written in stone for all the movement that happens. And the plebiscite? You check under the rug, behind the couch cushions. Nope, still missing. Now you hit the 80s. India's Kashmir region starts boiling from the inside. Elections are rigged, dissent is silenced, and resentment brews like strong kewa. You walk the alleyways of Srinagar, graffiti whispering Azadi, freedom, in chipped red paint. The streets feel tense like something's about to snap. And in 1989, it does. An armed insurgency erupts in Indian-controlled Kashmir. Young men, many trained or supported from across the border, take up arms against Indian forces. Others just vanish into the mountains. You hear gunshots at night and protests by day. A new generation has grown up under occupation, checkpoints, and broken promises, and they're no longer waiting politely for ballots that never come. India responds with a massive military presence. Thousands of troops flood the region. Human, Rights groups report disappearances, torture, and civilian deaths. Pakistan cheers from the sidelines, though it's not exactly sitting on its hands. Fighters and weapons continue to flow across the low sea. You meet a shopkeeper who says he's been searched 15 times this week. His son joined the militants. His daughter stopped going to school. His eyes flicker with exhaustion. "This isn't life," he says. "It's waiting." At this point, the low sea isn't just a line, it's a living, breathing boundary that eats normalcy. One moment you're sipping tea by a lake, the next you're ducking mortars. Even cricket matches between India and Pakistan feel like proxy wars. Remember, these two countries have fought 3 wars over this region. It's starting to feel like a really intense custody battle, except the kid never gets a say. In 1999, another round of gunfire breaks the uneasy silence. The Kargil War. Pakistani soldiers and militants sneak into Indian positions high up in the mountains. India fights back, and after weeks of brutal high-altitude combat, they reclaim the territory. The US steps in diplomatically. Pakistan pulls back. You slide down a snowy slope exhausted, wondering how many more times this loop will repeat. Yet, through it all, life stubbornly persists. Children fly kites from rooftops. Couples sneak glances in public gardens. You hear laughter echo through a mosque courtyard after prayer. Kashmir isn't just a conflict, it's a home. People cook, love, grieve, and dream here. Even when barbed wire cuts the view, the sky above remains unclaimed. So as you sit under a chinar tree near the LOC, listening to distant artillery like some tragic lullaby, you realize this isn't just history. It's still happening, and no one seems ready to write the final chapter yet. Now you're scrolling through the 2000s like it's a cursed highlight reel. Coups, curfews, and a constant sense that one bad headline could spiral into something nuclear. No, really nuclear. Both India and Pakistan tested nukes in 1998, which means that every Kashmir flare-up from here on out comes with the unspoken tension of, please don't push the big red button. You stand near the Siachen Glacier, the highest battlefield on Earth. It's freezing, literally, and soldiers on both sides survive more snowstorms than skirmishes. You wonder what they're thinking, camped miles above sea level, guarding chunks of ice no one can live on. One of them shrugs and says, "It's not the place, it's the flag." But you're also starting to see the conflict shift shape. It's not just wars anymore, it's whispers, shadows, and back-channel deals. Drones buzz, satellites hover, spy agencies dance an invisible tango. In 2001, the Indian parliament is attacked by militants. India blames Pakistan-based groups. The two countries mass troops along the border. For a few terrifying months, you're one itchy trigger away from the apocalypse. Then somehow, through clenched teeth and international pressure, they step back. You exhale. By now, Kashmiris have lived under the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, AFSPI, for decades. It gives sweeping powers to Indian troops, and it's controversial to say the least. You pass another checkpoint. The soldier doesn't. Look much older than you. His hand trembles slightly on the trigger. You wonder who's more scared, him or the family in the car he's waving through. Quirky footnote for the night, in the mid-2000s, Bollywood kept trying to make Kashmir seem dreamy again. Cue romantic films set in the valley, featuring actors pretending not to notice the barbed wire in the background. Kashmir was rebranded as Heaven on Earth, just with a few more security checks than the average paradise. And then comes 2016. You hear the name Burhan Wani, a young social media-savvy militant whose death in a shootout sparks a massive uprising. Protests erupt. The internet is cut. Schools shut down. Stones fly, followed by pellets. Hospitals overflow. Historians still argue whether this